Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months.
Go to Bolt Fam, it's the director. Chargers fans, I got an awesome video lined up for you guys. Probably one of the most important that I'm producing here in the offseason, setting us up a preview of what to expect in the 2024 season. I'm going to give you guys kind of a preview, an in-depth look into the mind of this man right here, Jesse Minter, the new defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Chargers, and why I think he's implementing one of the biggest changes and maybe one of the most exciting, successful changes that we've seen in defense for very many years. And this because, you know what, we saw a signing a couple of days ago, right, in Bud Dupree. A lot of us were wondering what's going on with the other guy out there in Tuli Tuipulotu. We saw a lot of potential from him last season. Are we putting him on the back burner? No, I want to emphasize to you guys just how big of a signing this is, how telling it is to what Jesse Minter wants to operate, and really give you guys some excitement as to the potential of what this new defense could ultimately look like. I like to key it to one of my favorite movies, Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that really is the whole idea of this defense. It's everything everywhere all at once. Good luck if you're an offensive coordinator trying to counter this, because it's been labeled the Sean McVay system, but for defense, man. It is quite aggressive. It's quite fun to watch, and ultimately, it's going to be something that Chargers fans are very excited to see here in 2024. So buckle up, guys. I did a lot of research for this video. I'm going to try and explain it the best way I can so everybody can understand exactly why the Jesse Minter defense is going to be one very fun to watch for fans this season. Before we do kick off, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $250. Shout out to Underdog. Thank you so much for setting up the Bolt Fam with that code. Newcomers, take a look here at the Scotty Scheffler special if you guys want to get in on some golf action this weekend. Before we do kick off, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, bell notification. Helps me out a lot. We're almost to 50,000 subs. Let's go, Bolt Fam. Lights, camera,
action.
Minter's Mayhem, the Chargers' new defense explained. All right, this is going to be a big video, guys. One that, again, I pulled a lot of stuff together in order to try and explain everything, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And to everybody in the comments, don't worry, we're going to be updating the opener here shortly once we get some new promo material from the Chargers. It'll be fun. It'll be good. Let's jump into this video. Now, before we do jump in officially to Jesse Minter and what makes him special and why he's going to make an awesome transformation of the Chargers defense, we got to jump back a little bit in time, a little bit of story time from director as to the origins of this defensive scheme, this system. It really isn't honestly anything too groundbreaking in terms of, plays and informations and that are utilized, et cetera, more so on the personnel, okay? And it's an idea that was kind of born with this man right here in Mike Macdonald. Okay, it comes from a couple of different trees, but mainly the Mike Macdonald tree, out of Baltimore. Okay, I think that's kind of where it kind of first stemmed from. Now, this is a system that Jim Harbaugh is extremely familiar with, as Mike Macdonald was his defensive coordinator in Michigan in 2021. And it's kind of funny how this actually came to pass. In that year, Jim Harbaugh wanted to implement a new NFL-style defensive system in Michigan to help carry him into what would ultimately be the national championship. And so he turned to his brother, John Harbaugh of the Baltimore Ravens, to kind of help him fulfill that. And John ultimately basically loaned Jim Harbaugh Mike Macdonald for one season. After that season, John wanted him back, and they built what is one of the best defenses in football today in the Baltimore Ravens. Now, after that, Jim did continue building on that new system, but with Jesse Minter, who also stems from the Baltimore Ravens tree. Now, together, Jim and Jesse, they have perfected one of the most lethal defenses in football, which in large part resulted in a national championship. Now, that was at the collegiate level, okay? When it comes to the NFL, that same idea and those same concepts do exist, but with the Baltimore Ravens and John Harbaugh. And that has been wildly successful in the NFL. Now, ultimately, a lot of people will ask, Director, what makes this defense so special? Why is it something that we're hyping up? Ultimately, Minter's defense is the ultimate versatility that you're going to find in the NFL. It's something that, again, we see with the Baltimore Ravens a lot. Now, the disguise does play a big part in this whole thing, right? We see a lot of multiple defenses. They're coming out here trying to say, hey, look, we're going to be blitzing from this side when we're really blitzing from that side, or here comes the coverage from this side. Actually, wait, he's going to drop back. A lot of that has a lot to do with it. But more so, it's the ability for every player to play any role on the defense and understand exactly what everyone else is doing. That synchronicity between all of the players, all the personnel, really results in a much cleaner and more lethal execution for the Chargers with this whole underlying idea. For example, it wouldn't be uncommon in a Jesse Minter defense to see something as crazy as a defensive tackle dropping into coverage, over the middle. Sure, he's probably not going to go out there and make a spectacular grab, spectacular, contested catch interception, but he's a body out there. He's a guy that the quarterback has to account for. It takes time to understand what's happening in front of you as a quarterback. And meanwhile, you've got a linebacker or safety blitzing from a different angle. It's something that every player on the defense understands. Everybody has to be able to play every single role. And this is because Minter likes keeping the offensive coordinator guessing. If you're expecting an overload blitz from the strong side, but your blockers are confused on who's blitzing and who's dropping, it often leads to a free man on the quarterback. That's very, very exciting to think about. And that's why I akin it to one of my favorite movies in Everything Everywhere All at Once, because it really is every player being able to play every position all at the same time. And depending on how it's set up, you can call the same overload blitz 5-6 different times, but executed by different players results in different assignments for blockers, offensive coordinator to account for. That it creates a lot of opportunity for that same play to work over and over and over again. Another great example of this was against the Chargers, and this is an article that I read on The Athletic. Fantastic read if you guys haven't seen it yet, on the Mike Macdonald defensive system. It's awesome read if you guys want to check out a little bit more in depth of what the Chargers defense could look like. But in that play and in that article that they described, it was against the Chargers, in which the Ravens disguised a weak side blitz with Patrick Queen. Okay, so he's coming in off the weak side. The Chargers have Austin Eckler in there as that blocking running back on the play. The Chargers decide to slide right. They send Austin Eckler to the right to account for Patrick Queen, who's coming off the edge, when really it was all a ruse. It was all a trick, right? In order to get the guy opposite them free, which would ended up being the nickel back that was blitzing off the opposite side. The nickel completely came free off to the quarterback, forcing, I think it was a pressure on Justin Herbert, and ultimately a throwaway there by the Chargers. And in this play, we do in fact see a defensive tackle drop into coverage in order to help sell the pressure off the right side. Because Justin Herbert, all of a sudden, he couldn't just hit the man over the middle. There was a person there. And when things are happening in real time, you're not throwing the ball to that person in the middle of the field, regardless if it's a defensive tackle, linebacker, DB, doesn't matter. He had to account for that. He held on to the ball. Nickel blitz gets home, almost, and forces an incompletion. This is why everything, everywhere, all at once is what comes to mind when thinking of Jesse Minter's new system. It basically tells us that anything could happen at any time from anyone, and it works even better when the roster is built around this idea. And it's something that we've started to see within the Chargers on how they're going about their roster construction. It really is quite remarkable, and it's one that, as I did more research as a fan, understanding exactly why we're making these particular moves, especially the one revolving around Bud Dupree, that's kind of what stemmed and began this whole search, at least for me, as to why we decided to make that move. Once you look into it more, you start to understand exactly what the motivation is behind adding players like that. Okay? Let's talk. So now that you guys kind of have an idea of what the idea is, in a Jesse Minter defense. To make it very simple, ultimate versatility is what you're looking for. We're trying to bamboozle the offense and run a lot of concepts to the strengths of our player personnel, but ultimately creating strengths in our players in terms of playing multiple different roles. Okay, so versatility, versatility, versatility. That's the main thing I want to drive home with you guys. So after that, it becomes kind of a game of roster construction. Let's open up that Madden franchise and see who's got a zone rating of higher than 60 on the edge, or a DT if you can find one in the draft. Let's go ahead and look at the roster construction. First off, this is where we begin to understand why the Chargers are building the roster the way they are and why they emphasize certain positions over others, right? I think it's got everything to do with versatility. I think the idea of this defense, much like Harbaugh's philosophy on offense, does start in the trenches, more particularly at the edge position. This, to me, is the lifeblood of a concept like this for Jesse Minter's defense for several different reasons. For one, yes, there's the basic principle of pressure, right? This is the best way to counter teams like Kansas City and Baltimore Ravens with those big playability quarterbacks, right? Apply pressure, and the Mahomes miracles kind of fade even a little bit, right? Pressure, pressure, pressure. That's ultimately going to be your best counter move to good quarterback play. And the Chargers are well equipped to keep quarterbacks on their toes. It's a position they've used a lot of resources on, right? We know this. Drafting Thule last season, great pickup by the Chargers. This season, we signed Bud Dupree. Of course, we go through, keeping Bosa and Mack. There's a lot that's gone into that position, and it's because ultimately this is the cornerstone of what makes a Jesse Minter's defense work. I think edge is the ultimate thing you have to have, and the Chargers were very keen on keeping those pieces together as well as building on them if they could. Now let's start with the first part of that sentence, right? Keeping the band together, right? I think this is one of the biggest lures, which is kind of crazy to think about because of Justin Herbert, of course, and the offensive potential there, but for even Jim Harbaugh. And of course, he knew what he would be providing in bringing Jesse Minter into the fold because he wanted to put, just as he brought a good situation for himself and Justin Herbert, he wanted to put a good situation for Jesse Minter in that defense for his new defensive coordinator as well. Of course, you guys know Jim Harbaugh, Jesse Minter, both coming from the national championship team, Michigan Wolverines. Okay? I think one of the biggest reasons that they wanted to make this work and a big reason that they were excited about this team was because of this duo right here. Let's start with them, right? Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. Both of these dudes were heavily linked to offseason cut and trade rumors. Okay, a lot of speculation because of money mainly revolving around the Chargers having to move on from one, if not both, of these guys, which was pretty shocking to think about. I, for one, if you guys were to go back and look at some of my content, I thought that Khalil Mack and his big contract would force a painful move by the Chargers in parting ways from him, and he's been awesome the past couple of seasons for the Chargers. But instead of all that going down, and instead of what we perceived as our prediction as fans is how they fix the money situation, instead we saw a different move. Jim, Jesse, and let's not forget Joe, the 3 J's, right? Joe Ortiz. They found a way to keep that core element in place. Ultimately, it came by, some pay cuts by Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, which we have to think about it both ways here, okay? You got to think about it from the perspective of the team, which is very easy for us. Like, we need to save some money. We got to get under the cap. If the players can take pay cuts, that's a pretty huge incentive to keep them on the roster. Bing, bang, boom, that worked out for the Bolts beautifully. But what about the players? Why would they ever do this? Well, it's because of the situation, right? Joey Bosa has not had the best situation the past couple of seasons. He's a great player, but he's not been able to stay on the field. But now the situation has changed in Los Angeles. Sure, he could have, held his ground, not budged, and got the money that was on his contract for this year. But that sets him up in a pretty awkward situation in terms of maybe getting cut, maybe going to a new system, a different setting, a different environment where maybe his talents, even if he were healthy, couldn't thrive, right? What if he were to go to, I don't know, like the Raiders or something, or if he were to go to a different system that doesn't have as good of a pass rush, right? Or isn't set up for something like that. Maybe his talents and his ability to get another contract next season are lessened. But because the Chargers are building a system revolving around the edge position with Jesse Minter and Jim Harbaugh, I think Joey Bosa understood that his chances for success in LA are probably a lot better than if he tested free agency. If he risked getting cut and going somewhere else, maybe his future was being put in jeopardy. So maybe the best move for him as a player, and even talking purely business perspectives, was to take the pay cut with the Chargers, keep himself in a situation where he will thrive if he can stay on the field with Jesse Minter and Jim Harbaugh, and set himself up to either stay with the Chargers next season or get another contract in a couple of years that is worth what he wants in terms of dollar figures. So I think it kind of works both ways there, if you're talking as to the pay cut for the Chargers as well as for the players. All right. I have to imagine this was a major emphasis for the new regime. Okay, keep Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack together. Keep the monster duo together at all costs, because this new system will largely revolve around them. It's not just about what they bring to the system this year, which will be awesome if they can both stay on the field, but what they're creating together. The whole idea of Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter is creating something, not just for this year, not just for next year, but forever. Wherever Jim Harbaugh goes, that culture kind of lives on forever. Michigan, San Diego, everywhere. Okay? And I think this is a huge reason why on defense you want to start off with Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. You're building something that you want to make last. Even if the plans change over the next couple of seasons, even if players rotate in and out, the idea is strong. So now next, let's take a look at the backups at edge. Okay? And I put backups in quotations for a reason, but we're going to circle back to that in just a minute. Tuli Tuipulotu. He had an awesome and insane rookie season, right? He's primed for a breakout in 2024. Some people may say that was stifled a little bit because of the signing of Bud Dupree. But he's a great player. He's got violence, versatility, speed. That's all on full display. And, of course, versatility, pound the table. It's kind of what we're looking for in the Jesse Minter defense. Last year, 4.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, pass defended. We saw him drop into coverage plenty. And he actually looked pretty dang good out there. Tuli is going to fit beautifully in what Jesse Minter wants out here. But the Chargers weren't done. We then saw the team add yet another edge talent by the name of Bud Dupree to the roster. And this is where the confusion kind of set in for me, at least. I'm sure a lot of Chargers fans. Why? We have Tuli. We have 3 stacked edge players. Why add Bud Dupree? Who, in his defense, one of the fastest, most versatile options at the position. Again, pound the table for versatility. Why? Is this a coincidence? Are we just overloading? No. Again, it's because the edge is going to be the driving force of this defense. The Chargers don't want to risk not having the juice at that position at all times. And that includes premium depth. Sure, yeah, let's go ahead and throw that out there. Premium depth is important. No matter what happens in the year, you want as many options as possible to go out there and continue sustaining that pressure. And I don't think the Chargers are going to be looking at Tuli's rookie season and deciding to bury him on the depth chart. I don't think that they're overloading the position just to make sure that all of their bases are covered. They have a plan for these guys. They have a plan for Tuli. Don't worry, he's not going to be wasted. Because I don't view guys like Tuli and Dupree as strictly backups, not at all. I think I view them as Swiss Army knives. For everyone, actually. Like, everybody on the defensive line is going to be affected by this. And this is because I think a mix of Bosa, Mack, Tuli, Dupree, Fox, these guys are all going to be on the field at all times, right? Not all of them at all times. A combination of that is going to be on the field at all times. And I expect a lot of looks where Bosa and Mack, let's say, are even lined up inside at defensive end, giving more flexibility for that position to drop into coverage if necessary, with Tuli and or Bud Dupree lined up at edge. There's a lot of combinations all of a sudden. Matter of fact, it becomes one of those puzzles, you know, where it says hundreds of different possible combinations. Try and solve as many as possible. Or different customization options. You know, there's so many different. It really does come down to that. Here's a few that kind of make sense to me, right? If you're going across the line from left to right. Bosa, Fox, Tito, Mack, Tuli. Option 1, option 2, Tuli, Bosa, Ford, Mack, Dupree. Mack, Bosa, Fox, Tuli, Dupree. Dupree, Mack, Ford, Tuli, Bosa, etc., 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 etc. There are so many different combinations that make sense here. And you know what? You know what the biggest pain in the butt is when you factor in all of these different combinations? Because that all of a sudden is kind of crazy, right? All the different ways that you can roll out. The biggest pain in the butt from the offensive coordinator's perspective is, who the hell's blitzing? And from where? And what side? And who's dropping? Edge is so huge for this defense. You add that element to the puzzle, and the combinations become almost endless. This ultimate versatility at the line creates confusion, and confusion creates mistakes, and mistakes create pressure. Loads of it. And that is kind of why the edge position is so vital to this whole idea. Now, some are calling us the Ravens of the West, which ultimately I'm fine with, right? That's fine by me because that defense was one of the most lethal in the NFL last year, resulting in a league-leading 60 sacks in 2023. And the Chargers, who are no slouches, logged 48 last year. That's one of the best I've seen in years. I can't imagine how lethal it could be when building on that number. This whole idea, this whole system, it's exciting. It's extremely exciting. So we talked about the edge position, their versatility, why they're important. Let's talk about the next position, okay? The linebackers. Gotta look at the linebackers. Now, in systems past, even last year for the Chargers, you could easily make a case that the defensive backs were probably the most important position, right? Way more important than linebacker for the Chargers. But in my opinion, linebacker all of a sudden definitely rivals defensive backs in this new system. For one, let's take a look at the blueprint, right? The Baltimore Ravens of last season. They invested pretty heavily in the position of linebacker the past few years. Even with the ascending Patrick Queen on the roster, the Ravens threw down to get yet another guy on the team by the name of Roquan Smith, who was made available for trade. This guy was awesome. Together, this duo in particular, which is absolutely disgusting, that duo destroyed defenses or offenses week after week after week. They were awesome. You know why? Because both can cover, both can blitz, both can cover serious ground against the run. It was a nightmare for guys to go against, especially quarterbacks, right? But in my opinion, the most important aspect of both of these players were their ability to sell disguises, right? You absolutely never knew what was about to happen. Like, wow, these guys were the pro. What would Jim say? The pros pro at making sure that that was executed to perfection every single time. Because sure, yeah, these guys and their talents, they were often the dagger, but they were also the cloak. Ooh, that gave me shivers. Ooh, nice wordplay, director. Not just the dagger, but also the cloak. Because being able to maximize on different looks and formations on offense is so important. And Roquan Smith, I'm pretty sure, was wearing the green dot for them last season. He did a fantastic job setting everybody up for maximum success every single down. And this is why this idea gets really exciting for the Chargers. This is why the addition of Junior Colson is so dang important to the Chargers. He could be the key to everything here for the Bolts in their first season under Jesse Minter. And this is because he was the man calling the shots for Minter in Michigan. He is our Roquan Smith. This is why there was so much hype revolving around the pick, why the steal of the draft label was being thrown around so much, why the weight of his presence is so huge. He is the key to unlocking this defense. He unlocks it all because he was born in this defense. He was born in the idea of versatility. He was sculpted by the idea of disguise. It's a lot to ask of a rookie, yes, but funny enough, he is the best equipped to do it. He is the key. Junior Colson is the key to everything. Then you add on top of that, his intelligence, his understanding, his leadership on defense, all very exciting stuff. Then you add his talent on top of that. We may have a bona fide star in the making in Los Angeles. This dude is going to rock. He carries a lot of the same traits as Patrick Queen, as Roquan Smith. Even a little baby Bobby Wagner is what a lot of people call him. Baby Bobby Wags, at least by me. Baby Bobby Wags. He's going to make such a massive impact for the Chargers year one. Now, I'm not going to say that the Chargers couldn't figure it out, right? Let's say we got somebody other than Junior Colson, and Derwin James probably still out there calling the shots, which he probably could still with Junior Colson. I think the Chargers would figure it out eventually, maybe even this season. But Junior Colson gives them the best opportunity to understand now, to execute now, to get it right now. And that is going to save us some precious, valuable time in 2024. Then you factor in, man, his teammates at the position. Yeah. It quietly did see a huge facelift, right? Coulson, Denzel Perryman, Troy Dye on special teams. You got Dan Henley, who has a ton of potential as well. We were looking pretty great all of a sudden. But I think it's when you factor in the DBs as well is where things get particularly exciting. Okay? We talked about the edge players and their versatility being so important. The trenches as well with Morgan Fox and those guys is going to be very important as well. But edge. Linebacker. Two, probably the most important aspects of the defense. Now you factor in what we're going to see from the DBs as well. You guys want to know the photo I chose for this one? Yeah, I've shown it a couple of times recently. I'm going to show it again. The DBs. When you're talking about physical, hard-hitting players, which is going to be a big part of the Chargers organization from now on, not just in defense, offense, everywhere. Physical, hard-hitting, old school style football. The DBs are lumped in there too. And this is where things get crazy when talking about, the different position groups and their versatility. Who was one of the most versatile players in the entire NFL? Derwin friggin' James. You can play this man anywhere. Versatility is the most important aspect here, and the Chargers have some of the great ones on their roster. With all the praise that we've given the linebackers, imagine what happens when you throw Derwin James into the mix as well. Well, you don't actually have to think too hard. Guys, we've got some great examples in Baltimore with Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen lining up with Kyle Hamilton as well. Not to mention Marcus Williams. They've got some great DBs out there in terms of safety. Those guys rocked last season. The Chargers are set up beautifully to do the same. Hamilton, Roquan, those guys rocked the NFL last year. Remember the puzzle that we did for the edge guys? Right, we kind of went left to right to see how many different combinations we could do. Let's do it again, but with the linebackers and safeties, right? Just in the box. Just a couple guys in the box, right? You got Coulson, Denzel. You got Coulson, Derwin. You got Derwin, Denzel. You got Denzel, Alohi. You got Alohi, Coulson, etc. And all those combinations, in fact, triple when you factor in who could be playing in the slot. Derwin could play the slot. Maybe Alohi could play the slot. Who knows? Throw Coulson in the slot for all I care. I don't know, man. All those combinations create a number that I couldn't, like, if I had a year to count up to it, maybe I wouldn't be able to figure it out. It's impossible to account for all the different ways we could line these guys up. It really is. Then you remember that Derwin and Alohi, which why I chose this photo, are both insane in run support. You remember that both these guys can blitz. Remember both these guys are physical, can play the box. And now you see the wild and endless potential of the 2024 Los Angeles Chargers defense. Right? When we go back to this, everyone is blitzing. Everyone is dropping. Everyone is doing everything all at once. And offensive coordinators are left wondering, where the hell is it all coming from? Because you can know exactly what the defense is running in terms of play, but if you have no idea who's executing that role or from what side or from who or from what, it sucks to try and slow that down. The Chargers have all the personnel in the world to make this work. The Jesse Minter experiment is off to a really good start in terms of roster construction, in terms of personnel. And in terms of execution, man, we got so stupidly lucky with Junior Coulson. I cannot even tell you the impact that he's going to make year one. But in fact, it's the combination of versatility of every single position on this team. Of edge, of linebacker, of safety. And yes, to answer your question, in terms of DB, a lot of people will be like, well, Director, what about the corners? The corners? Yes, the corners are going to be important, especially when it comes to slot. But funny enough, in my opinion, not the most important position in this particular system. Sure, you need to get guys that can cover, and sure, it's probably going to be something the Chargers notice this year in terms of we need more talent, right? I think Asante Samuel is going to be our guy out there at cornerback, but we're going to need to add some talent maybe next season, maybe via trade, who knows? But they'll do their jobs. And I think they're going to be set up for a lot more success because of what's happening in front of them, because of the edge guys, because of the linebackers, because of the safeties as well. Like, their opportunities to make big plays are going to be there because Derwin, Thule, Bosa, Mack, Dupree, all these guys are going to be screaming at the quarterback 24/7. Corners just have to kind of be in the right place at the right time to make a play. Maybe that's why the Chargers didn't throw down the gauntlet, at least this season. They will eventually, but maybe that's why they didn't throw down the gauntlet this year. But I hope you guys understand now from this video, and again, I tried to compress everything as best I could as to why I think that this defense is going to be special and why I think the Jesse Minter idea is going to be very exciting to watch. I hope I was able to compress it in a way that was easy to understand and ultimately to help get your hype up around the whole thing. Everybody's going to have multiple jobs to play, but it's done so in a way that's easy to understand for every player and doesn't ask too much from the players themselves in order to learn and execute. Once you understand the idea of the Jesse Minter defense, you understand why versatility is king here and why the Chargers have set themselves up beautifully to be the next Ravens defense in the NFL. Ravens of the West is what will be called, and I think the Chargers are off to a very good start. I think this upcoming season is going to shock a lot of people in terms of our execution. I think Junior Colson's a big part of that, but as well as just how hard-hitting, physical, and old school this team is going to look when you roll out the kind of concepts that we're going to see from Jesse Minter. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you like what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. We're very close to 50,000 subs. Get ready to pop the champagne, open the cigars. Thank you guys so much for helping me get this far, man. So excited for the 2024 season, for Jim Harbaugh, and yes, for Jesse Minter. We'll see you guys next time. As always, bolt up, stay frosty, and I'm ready for Junior Colson season, baby. Let's kick that thing off strong.